Hello, and welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
In today's lesson, we're going to help you talk about stress, emotions, and staying calm in English.
This is a really important topic because in real life, people often talk about feeling stressed, overwhelmed, tired, frustrated, or emotionally drained.
Exactly. And people also talk about how they deal with pressure, how they calm themselves down, and how they try to avoid unnecessary conflict.
So today, we're going to show you how to speak about this topic in a natural, thoughtful, real-life way.
But before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
It really helps the channel grow and reach more people.
And it helps more learners practice English in a natural, real-life way.
So if you enjoy useful English lessons like this, make sure you subscribe and stay with us.
First, listen to our dialogue.
Then we'll come back and explain the key phrases step by step.
Let's get started. Hi, thanks for coming in today. I thought the studio would be a good place for this conversation because it feels quiet, calm, and a little more private.
Hi, yes, I think so too. Some topics need a calmer setting, and this one definitely feels like that kind of topic.
Exactly. Today, we're talking about stress, emotions, mental health, and how to stay calm, especially in difficult situations.
That's such an important topic. People talk about stress all the time, but not everyone knows how to describe what they really feel in English.
That's very true. A lot of learners know words like sad, angry, stressed, or tired, but they don't always know how to explain things more naturally and clearly.
Exactly, and I think this is one of those topics where people really want useful, real-life English because it comes up in everyday conversation, at work, in relationships, and in moments when emotions are high.
Yes, definitely. So let me start with a simple question. When life gets stressful, how do you usually react?
I think my first reaction is usually internal, not external. I don't often become very dramatic on the outside, but I can feel a lot of pressure inside. If too many things happen at once, I tend to go quiet and try to process everything before I speak.
That sounds very self-aware. So when you feel stressed, you become quieter rather than louder.
Yes, usually. I think some people release stress by talking more, but for me it often works the other way. I need a little space first, just to understand what I'm actually feeling.
That makes sense. So would you say you're good at noticing stress early, or do you only realize it when it becomes too much?
That's a good question. I'd like to say I notice it early, but honestly, I think sometimes I only realize it properly when I start feeling physically tired, mentally scattered, or less patient than usual.
That sounds very real. A lot of people probably recognize that. So for you, stress doesn't always arrive as one big moment. It can build slowly.
Exactly. It's often gradual. Sometimes it looks like tiredness, irritability, overthinking, or feeling like even small things take too much energy.
That's such a useful way to describe it. And I think people often say, I'm stressed, but they don't always explain what that actually means for them personally.
Yes, that's true. Stress can look very different from person to person.
So what usually helps you calm down when you're under pressure?
Usually something simple. I think the first thing that helps is slowing the situation down a little. If I feel overwhelmed, I try not to react too quickly. I might step away, make tea, go for a walk, or just sit quietly for a few minutes.
That sounds very healthy. So for you, calm begins with creating a little space.
Yes, I think if I react too fast when I'm stressed, I usually don't say my best thoughts. I might not say anything terrible, but I won't say it in the best way either.
That's a very honest point. So staying calm is not about pretending you feel nothing. It's about not letting the first emotional wave control your words.
Exactly. I think calm is often about timing. Sometimes the best thing you can do is pause for a moment before speaking.
That's such a good line. Do you think people sometimes confuse calm with weakness?
Yes, definitely. Some people think if you stay calm, you're passive or not strong enough to respond. But I actually think staying calm takes a lot of strength, especially when you're upset.
I completely agree. Reacting immediately is easy. Responding carefully is often much harder.
Exactly. And I think that's especially true in conflict. When someone is rude, dismissive, or aggressive, it's very tempting to mirror that energy.
Yes, absolutely. So, how do you usually avoid getting pulled into conflict?
I try to remember that not every situation deserves my full emotional energy. That really helps me. Sometimes people are upset for reasons that have very little to do with you, and if you absorb all of it, the situation just gets worse.
That's such a useful mindset. So, in a way, you try not to take everything personally straight away.
Yes, of course, that's not always easy. If someone speaks badly to you, it affects you. But I try to create one small mental step between what happens and how I react.
That sounds very wise. So, instead of reacting immediately, you ask yourself what's really happening.
Yes, I try to think, is this really about me? Is this worth arguing over? Will this matter tomorrow? Those questions help me stay more grounded.
That's really powerful, and that kind of language is so useful in English, too. Questions like, is this worth it? Or do I really want to give this my energy?
Exactly. Those little questions can stop a situation from becoming bigger than it needs to be.
That makes a lot of sense. What about anger? Are you someone who gets angry quickly?
Not usually quickly, no. I think I become frustrated before I become angry. For me, frustration often comes first, especially if something feels unfair, repetitive, or unnecessary.
That's such a useful distinction, frustrated before angry.
Yes, and I think it matters because frustration often builds quietly. If you ignore it for too long, then it can become anger later.
That sounds very true. So, what do you do when you feel frustration building?
I try to name it honestly. Even just saying to myself, I'm getting frustrated, helps more than pretending I'm completely fine. Then I try to reduce the intensity of the moment before I speak too much.
That's a really good strategy. So, naming the emotion helps you manage it.
Yes, I think so. When you name something, it becomes clearer and a little less chaotic.
I really like that. Do you think you're good at expressing emotions clearly?
Better than I used to be, I think. I'm still not someone who explains every feeling immediately, but I think I've learned that clarity is kinder than silence in many situations.
That's beautifully put. So, silence is not always the most peaceful option.
No, not always. Silence can look calm from the outside, but sometimes it just hides tension. I think honest, respectful communication is usually healthier in the long run.
That makes complete sense. So, what does healthy communication look like to you when emotions are involved?
I think it means saying what you feel without attacking the other person. Something like, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need a minute. I didn't like the way that was said, or can we talk about this more calmly?
Those are such useful real life sentences. They sound calm, clear, and respectful.
Yes, and I think that's the goal, not to suppress everything, but to say it in a way that doesn't automatically create more conflict.
That's such an important point. Do you think people often make conflict worse by trying to win instead of trying to understand?
Yes, absolutely. Once a conversation becomes about winning, it usually stops being productive. Then it's not really about truth, clarity, or solving anything. It becomes about ego.
That's very true, and ego makes everything louder.
Yes, ego usually doesn't make conversations calmer.
That's such a good point. So, would you say listening is one of the most important conflict skills?
Yes, definitely. Real listening lowers emotional temperature. It doesn't mean you agree with everything, but it shows the other person they've at least been heard, and that changes the atmosphere a lot.
That's really powerful. What about you? Do you think you find it easy to stay calm?
I think I try, but I'm curious about your answer too. Do you naturally stay calm, or is it something you've had to learn?
I think it's something I've had to learn more consciously over time. I'm naturally emotionally aware, which can be a strength, but it also means I can feel a lot in a situation. So staying calm for me is not automatic, it's a choice and a practice.
That makes a lot of sense. So calmness for you is active, not passive.
I don't think calm means I don't feel anything. It means I try to stay connected to myself while emotions are happening.
That's such a strong line, staying connected to yourself while emotions are happening.
Yes, because emotions move fast. If you lose yourself inside them, you can say things you don't really mean or react in ways that don't help.
That's very true. So what usually helps you stay calm?
A few things. Slowing my breathing helps, stepping back mentally helps, and also remembering that I don't need to answer everything immediately. That one is very important for me.
That's such good advice. Not everything needs an instant answer.
Exactly. Sometimes the healthiest response is, I need a moment, or let me think about that, or even, I'd rather talk about this when I'm calmer.
Those are incredibly useful phrases.
Yes, because they're honest but still calm and clear.
You know, this topic is so useful because it starts with one simple question: how do you react to stress? But then it naturally opens into emotions, calmness, boundaries, conflict, listening, and communication.
And that's why this topic is so good for learners who want natural English. It's real, meaningful, and full of language people actually use.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's look at the key phrases from the dialogue and see how to talk about stress, emotions, and staying calm in English more naturally.
Yes, because this topic is not only about words like stressed or angry, it's also about how you explain feelings, reactions, and difficult situations more clearly.
When we talk about reactions, we often use phrases like, I tend to go quiet when I'm stressed. I need a little space to process things. I become less patient than usual. I try not to react too quickly. These are useful because they show your emotional pattern, not only the emotion itself.
Yes, and they make your English sound much more real and self-aware.
When we want to talk about staying calm, we often use phrases like, I try to slow the situation down. I need a moment. Let me think about that. I'd rather talk about this when I'm calmer. Not everything needs an immediate response. I try to stay connected to myself while emotions are happening. These are excellent phrases if you want to sound calm, clear, and emotionally mature.
And they're very useful in real life, especially when a situation feels tense.
When we need to express something difficult without making the conflict worse, we often use phrases like, I didn't like the way that was said. I'm finding this conversation difficult right now. I felt hurt by that comment. Can we talk about this more calmly? I don't want this to turn into an argument. I think we should slow this down a little. These help you sound honest, but still respectful.
Yes, they let you express yourself clearly without attacking the other person.
When we talk about emotions, we often need more than simple words like angry or sad. In real conversation, people often say things like, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, I feel a bit hurt, I'm emotionally tired, I'm carrying a lot right now, I'm more sensitive than usual today. These give your English much more nuance.
And that's what makes it sound more real and more adult.
When we talk about mental health in a calm, everyday way, we often use phrases like, I'm having a difficult day. I'm not at my best today. I need a bit of quiet. I need some space to clear my head. I'm trying to protect my mental health. Small things matter more than people think. I'm trying to not overload myself. These are honest, clear, and very useful in real conversations.
Yes, because they sound human and natural, not dramatic or artificial.
Throughout this lesson, we also used some very practical phrases that work in many situations, not only this one. For example, to be honest, I think, I tend to, what usually helps you? That makes a lot of sense. I completely agree. I need a moment. I feel overwhelmed. I'm getting frustrated. I didn't like the way that was said. Can we talk about this more calmly? I'm not at my best today. These are the kinds of phrases that help you sound thoughtful and natural in real life.
Yes, and they're useful far beyond this one lesson.
Here's an example of a natural answer. When I feel stressed, I usually go quiet first and try to process things. If I'm under a lot of pressure, I need a little space before I speak. What helps me most is slowing down, breathing, and not reacting too quickly. If a situation becomes tense, I try to stay calm and speak clearly instead of making the conflict bigger. I think small, everyday things like rest, quiet, and boundaries help protect my mental health too.
That sounds natural, thoughtful, and very real.
So, as you can see, talking about stress, emotions, and mental health in English is not only about basic words like sad, angry, or stressed.
It's also about nuance, self-awareness, and knowing how to express difficult feelings clearly and calmly.
And that's what makes your English sound more natural, more thoughtful, and more real.
And if you enjoy lessons like this, don't forget to subscribe.
It really helps the channel grow and reach more people.
And it helps more learners practice real, natural English.
So subscribe, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
Bye.